This particular story from the 12th chapter, according to Genesis, it's a big change. So as you look at this in front of us here, we have this Bible timeline, and we are way over here at the beginning. And if you know the book of Genesis, the first stories are of the creation, of how everything came to be. In the beginning, there was nothing. But then we go from the creation story to Cain and Abel. We have the Tower of Babel. Then we have Noah and the ark, the flood. And chapter 11 of Genesis is actually a very exciting chapter of a bunch of genealogies. And it lists the name of the children, the descendants of Noah's sons. And the last one, Noah's son Shem, as we get to the very end of chapter 11, we see the name Abram was one of the descendants of Shem, and he married Sarai, and she was barren. So you have this primeval history, right? 11 chapters of all this, and then, bam, we start chapter 12. The narrative changes from these big picture stories of the beginning to now this family, Abram and Sarai. And Abram will become Abraham, and Sarai will be Sarah, because God gives them these new names. So you just got to read a little bit further in the story. But this is a big change. And this is kind of the beginning of the story of Abram. But it's not really the beginning, right? Because Abram is 75 years old already as this story begins. What is of note in this text is that right at the start of this story, as we focus in on this family, we see God's blessing. Now, traditionally, we think of, Abraham received the covenant from God when God took him out and said, look up into the sky and count the stars. That will be the number of your descendants, right? Well, it actually starts even before that. Here we are, chapter 12, the narrative starts, and it's blessing. You will receive, you are a blessed child, Abram. And the blessing comes in three ways. You will receive land, you will have descendants, and you will be a blessing. You are blessed to be a blessing. And that third one is one that we will see play out again and again and again, as well as the first two. What's interesting about this, though, is that Abraham and Sarah will really not see the fruit of this promise. And the words that are used here, too, are pretty profound. It says in the text that we just heard, the Lord appeared to Abram. What does that mean? The Lord appeared to Abram. Was this a burning bush? Was it a presence, an angel who came to wrestle with him? Or was it a still small voice that Abram heard within him? How did the Lord appear to Abram? But God spoke to Abram and said, this is the promise, land, descendants, and you will be a blessing to all the nations of the world. But it happened, and Abraham and Sarah believed it. They believed it, that this promise from God was real, and that they would see this promise come to be, except they really didn't see a lot of it. The land that will be given to your descendants, the only land that Abram would ever own would be the land where he and Sarah would be buried, the cave where their bodies would be laid to rest. The descendants that they would see, the promised descendants, they saw one. His name was Isaac, right? And they even doubted that promise at times. They took matters into their own hands. There was Hagar and Ishmael and all this. If you read the next few chapters, you can see how all this takes place. But one servant. And would they be blessed to be a blessing to all the nations? Abraham and Sarah never saw it happen. We will see this story unfold. Next week, we're going to be with Joseph, who is a great-grandson of Abraham. And he would take God's people into Egypt and save them from famine. And eventually Moses would rescue them from Egypt and bring them into the land, the promised land that was in this promise. And as the story goes on, we see David and kings and prophets and ultimately Jesus, who would truly be the blessing that would change all nations. We know how the story goes. It happens, but Abraham and Sarah, they believed it would happen even though they didn't see it. They lived with that perspective. They lived their lives as though they were a gift to the future. They believed, they had faith that they were a gift to the future. Much of what we do in the church is that. That's how faith is carried out. That's what faith is. Faith is believing and trusting in that promise from God that we are a part of that promise and that we are a gift to the future. As those children are off in Sunday school right now, we have teachers, we have a new curriculum, we're investing, we're spending time and resource and energy because we believe we are a gift to the future. Those children are a gift to the future. Their faith is a gift to the future. The same on this Wednesday night as we kick off youth ministry. The work that we do as a congregation, we believe that we are a gift to the future. And I have to believe that in 1899, when a small group of families in Lake Geneva got together to found Emmanuel Lutheran Church, they had a sense that they were a gift to the future. That the real work, the profound work of God in this place was something that they would never even see happen. But they believed that Emmanuel would be a gift to what was coming, would be a community of people, a community of faith, founded in the gospel, the love of Christ, that would change the people who came in the doors of this church and would change this community and would change the world. And what about you? The example of faith that we have in today's story is Abraham and Sarah, a people who struggled with faith, a people who demonstrated great faith. We're not going to spend time in that story this year, but Abraham was asked to sacrifice that son, that promise, that descendant, and he would have done it had God not intervened at the last moment. But he believed. And this story is our story. It's your story. Will you believe? Will you grow in faith? Will you walk those steps? Will you grasp this promise that God makes to walk with you every step of the day, every step of the way? But it's up to you to invest in your family, to invest in loving those who are around you, to give generously of your time, your resources, with that perspective that you are blessed to be a blessing. You are a gift to the future.